What determines something as powerful? Three things. First, intentions. Are you actively exercising control? The resulting success has to be an outcome controlled by you. Is it by pure chance? Winning the lottery does not make you powerful. Second, what would have happened otherwise? To prove you have power, you must have done something that would not have happened if you had not done said actions. Third, capacity. You must be able to ensure that a successful outcome would have happened. It cannot just be because you were lucky. You can also have power without explicitly doing anything, as long as you have the ability to do something. The employer is still powerful, even when they are not firing people. There are different types of power. Three main types we're going to talk about. First, one dimensional, the power to influence behaviors. You can make someone do something they would not have done otherwise. Two dimensional, the power to name the problem, the power to influence the decision making process. And three dimensional, the power to affect people's goals. Example, advertising. Now, there's this very magical thing that is discussed in the work of Michel Foucault. Foucault argues that society behaves like the panopticon, a prison where inmates cannot tell whether they are being watched, so they assume they are always being watched. They obey rules because they are scared of punishment, and that leads to gradually being habitual. This manifests in our modern society through social norms. Although some social rules are enforced, most of them we follow implicitly. We follow laws without thinking. Common example, most people do not kill or steal even though there's no police officer watching. Or think about a social norm. Men in Western societies often don't wear skirts, so most men don't even think about that as a decision that they can make. This implies that we internalize these social norms. Through this, we can see that we are always constantly under the influence of power. Our identity is enforced by power. Think about it. Why do you like certain styles, certain forms of social interactions, have certain beliefs? The ultimate form of power is getting people to want to obey the rules. Power is often not consciously exercised. Every time you tell a girl that she looks nice in a dress, or tell a man with long hair that he looks too girly, you are exerting power. Whenever you follow social norms, you are making that norm or that belief more powerful as well. Power manifests in daily social interactions. Small conclusion. The assumption in liberal thought is that power is a dangerous thing in which individuals need protection from. But oftentimes, power does not require a coercive state. Traditional checks on the government is often not enough to ensure that power is not exploited. Let's talk about rights. The rights of the individual trumps over the interests of the community. If the government wants to ban citizens from giving opposing political views, we say that that is a violation of our right to free speech and expression. Or let's say that a majority of people democratically decided that all homosexuals should be executed. We would say that the LGBTQ's community rights to life is more important than the community's interests then. So, it is clear that human rights, or the rights of individuals, override the state or the community. Individuals have the right to lead life however they want. We also believe that people have the right to practice their culture or religion. But what happens when individual right conflicts with the right to practice said culture? On this topic, Martha Nussbaum, in her work Sex and Social Justice, claims that the individual human right will always trump everything else. This is because rights are bared by individuals and not by groups. So, an example, religious groups do not have the right to force members to adopt certain practices if they disagree. You can apply this analogy to any other group that exists. Yet, this poses a conflict. We will always go back and forth between the good of the individual versus the good of the greater good. Think of the ticking time bomb example. Imagine the police have a known terrorist in custody. The terrorist reveals that he has planted a bomb in a highly populated area of the city that will explode within 1 hour. Because the city is too large, it is impossible to find and defuse the bomb or evacuate everyone in time. The only possible way to get the location of the bomb is to torture the terrorist to get said info. Is it then justified to torture the terrorists? Should the individual right of the terrorist to not get tortured trump over the right of possible hundreds of people's right to life? If we follow the logic that has been happening in the last discussion, we would say that it is immoral to torture the terrorists. The logic above thinks that the wrongness of torture is not influenced by the number of casualties that could occur, because torture in and of itself violates fundamental human rights, and we cannot by any means cross that line. But you, as the viewer, probably disagree with this. You might think that in this scenario, it is justified to torture said terrorists. So, you are weighing the rights of some people above the rights of others. This conclusion leads society to act in certain ways. The belief that the individual matters more than the group is the reason why there are debates around the fact that modern society now prioritizes individual rights too much. They see themselves as individual people with rights rather than citizens who work together to obtain shared benefits. In Western societies, there's often more of a focus on individualism rather than the community. The priority is yourself. This is greatly different from Eastern societies, as they focus more on your contribution towards the greater good of the community rather than your unique identity. Though there is no concrete right or wrong answer to which is better, a common problem Western liberals bring up regarding a focus on community is that it leads to minorities getting oppressed, i.e., being different garners greater scrutiny and discrimination, and that is a moral wrong. On the flip side, Eastern communities are much more likelier to do their part to ensure the comfort of everyone else, i.e., much more willing to stay inside during COVID. Beliefs? These beliefs shape entire cultures, but one thing stays consistent. The end goal is always to get free and equal treatment for all. Look at the feminist movement, or civil rights activists who protested for equality for Black people, etc. But it is undeniable that rights inherently cause conflicts. It is inevitable that some rights must sometimes be traded for others. A small conclusion: this is not to say that our rights aren't good, but that we need to evaluate rights in the context of other principles as well. We cannot insist on committing to rights without acknowledging the nuances. Let's move on to political obligation. Why should we obey? Before this, let's address what criteria a theory of political obligation has to achieve. 3 main checks then. Why everyone is obligated to obey, why everyone is obligated to obey a law they do not like, how is freedom and equality still preserved? Now, two popular theories of political obligation to address them. First, social contract. Social contract is based on consent. The common liberalist idea is that citizens consent to the government, so their freedom is not compromised from that obligation. But, I never consented to the government. Well, there are two popular theories to address this. Thomas Hobbes gives the argument of hypothetical rational consent. Imagine a world without laws, where we live constantly under the threat of being murdered or robbed. Hobbes argues that this is a life that no one would want. Quote, that it is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. So, rationally, everyone would want a state with laws, or would consent to the law, to the state, naturally. This checks the first criteria. Hobbes thinks that we should look at laws as a collection of laws, not by a case-by-case basis. We should be obligated to obey laws because we are consenting to the state as a whole, as we would in a rational sense prefer any law that meets the minimum requirement of protecting us to the alternative, which is a life that has no laws and is very dangerous. This checks the second criteria. Yet, on the third criteria, Ronald Dworkin argues that a hypothetical is not enough to serve as consent, as in Hobbes' world, there is no real freedom because we are forced to consent as the alternative is framed as so bad. Second theory then, let's talk about tacit consent. John Locke argues that a life without laws is a life with perfect freedom and equality, so that life is not intolerable. John Locke believes that a life without laws is a life with perfect freedom and equality. So, this is a different life than what Thomas Hobbes describes. Hence, it is not an intolerable life. So, this enables us to give active consent to the state. So, how do we consent then? For Locke, he thinks that we give consent when we use, quote, any part of the dominions of any government. For Locke, he thinks that we give consent when we use, quote, any part of the dominions of any government. For example, the sidewalk, the trains, the street lights, etc. But does this mean if I stay home and never use anything, I don't consent and don't need to obey? Well, not exactly. As long as you live in the territory of a state, you are enjoying the benefits of the laws that those states implement. For example, people can't rob your house. There are some problems with this theory though. If we can't withhold consent, then is it really true and genuine consent? We can't determine the extent of our consent. Assuming we use services and support the laws that uphold those services, do we not consent to every other law then? When I need the services of law enforcement, do I also need to support the state-mandated protection of art museums? Carrying on. Let's address the second major theory of political obligation then. Fair play. This is the idea that if you were to benefit from something from the state, then you have a duty to contribute back. This idea is mainly backed by H.L.A. Hart, who argues that when other people restrict their liberty to provide benefits for you, then you should restrict your liberty in return. Example, taxes. This theory protects freedom and equality. Equality is ensured when everyone is forced to contribute because everyone is equal. So it would be wrong for only some people to restrict their liberties while others don't, but still receive the same benefits. Yet, this assumes that you are still obligated to contribute to benefits you didn't consent to. Philosopher Robert Nozick argues that if a person would prefer to not enjoy that benefit, it would be wrong to obligate them to return the favor. Political philosophy is the foundation for our civilization. I've always been an advocate for more critical thinking, especially in a political climate like this. So hopefully this inspired you to do your own research. Thank you for watching.